Hey, good morning, you guys. We're back, and I'm a little bit early today just because got some things to get done today. But we are back to finish up the film The Substance. And I think they basically rated this as like a dark comedy. You guys, this is way beyond a dark comedy. This is pretty much should have been a pretty close to a rated X movie. I had to get through it, but I'm going to give you guys the PG version today of the film. There was very disturbing imagery and way too much nudity. So let me give you what we have, because this is a necessary thing we have to do to help the people that do watch these films to wake up. And I know this is tough work for you guys, but for those of us on the front lines, we know that every one of these decodes reaches somebody who watches this stuff for entertainment. And that every decode that we do could potentially wake someone else up to join Team Jesus, right? I mean, you guys, we have to come to terms with the fact this is mainstream stuff now, okay? It's mainstream. And so who else is going to reach those people that are watching this stuff? So it's tough work. Let's get started on part 2. First of all, one of you solved the mystery of the green substance. Because remember, it's the green substance that gets injected into the body to cause the split, which then fractures a younger version of Demi Moore off into the movie. And we couldn't figure out, why didn't they just come right out and use adrenochrome? Because we do know that when she spawns off onto her younger self, that she does wear lots of pink. But here's what one of you found, and you guys are amazing. And I kind of knew this, but I forgot to include it in my decode and didn't think of the relevance of it in this particular situation. But if you look on your screen here, you see the green here mixed with the pink. Well, what that is those are complementary colors. Okay, so that's how they got around actually showing us a pink substance being injected into Demi Moore to split herself. This is the mystery of the green substance. It's actually the complementary color of adrenochrome, pink, as you can see here. And it's the exact color that was in the hypodermic needle, the greenish color, and then it complements the pink color. Now, what is this about? Well, the definition of a complementary color is a color that's opposite another color on the color wheel. Okay, we all remember basic color theory and basic knowledge about colors. And we know that there's a color wheel, and every color has an opposite color on the wheel, and that's called a complementary color. Now, why do they call it a complementary color? Well, because these colors tend to go well together in color schemes and for decorating and for artwork, hence the word complementary. So the green essentially spawns the pink younger self, and both colors are complements of one another. So great job. Let's keep going with this. Now I got some screenshots pulled up for you. I'm giving you the PG version of this. It was 10 times worse than this. But let's quickly recap. Part 1, we decoded halfway point through the movie, and we saw that Demi Moore was injecting herself with the substance to live in the better version of herself. But now, at this point in the film, the gulf between Demi Moore and her younger self, played by Elizabeth and Sue, it begins to grow. As they move to protect their existence, they don't realize that they are dependent on one another, which they were clearly told in the beginning, and they continue to try to break each other down and protect their own identity, one in the older body, one in the younger body. And the older Elizabeth wants to grow into her maturity, and she just wants to, all this is too scary for her, and she's realizing that her younger self is actually shaving years off of her life by extending the time that she gets to be young, which is past the 7 days. And when you do that, the older self suffers. So The older Elizabeth tries to go on a date with a man who still thinks she's beautiful, but her vanity consumes her and she's paralyzed and she does not go on the date. She stands the guy up. Sue, her younger half, who you're looking at on your screen here, she basically returns to her new career, but she thinks that her show's canceled, but really she got a promotion to a better time slot. Let's get this started here. I'm not sure why the sound isn't on. Oh, let's check the sound here, you guys. Hold on. Oh, I know why the sound's not on. All right. Okay, so here she goes.
Hello, everybody. What's happening? Where is everybody?
The taping's been canceled. We started at 42. Now we're up to 216.
So this is Dennis Quaid. She comes in. She's like, what happened? Why is my show canceled? He's like, we got a better time slot. You're doing so well. We're going to put you in a new time slot. And as you just heard, Dennis Quaid mentions two occult numbers. Of course, the number 42, the secret to the universe, and the number 216, which is 6 times 6 times 6. Now, what else does the number 42 represent? We did a lot of research on 42 and 216, didn't we? The two numbers he just mentioned. The number 42 is actually the 14, 14, and 14 generations from Abraham to Jesus that he mentions in the New Testament. And we found also that the number 42 is significant because it is the only angle that you can view a rainbow. In other words, if you're standing on the ground and you look up at a 42-degree angle, that is the angle that you're looking at when you see a rainbow. And I believe this was a reminder. This was a reminder from the Most High because he was the one who created the rainbow. And it was a new physical phenomenon mentioned in the book of Genesis when Noah got off the ark. And that rainbow was a promise. It was a promise that never again would the Lord flood the earth with a flood. And he set the rainbow in the cloud. Now, interestingly, the dove literally dovetails into that concept as well. And when Jesus was baptized, a dove returned, the Holy Spirit dove. It doesn't say there was a rainbow, but the two to me are linked together, the rainbow and the dove, because Jesus is the rainbow in effect in certain ways. And he is the reminder, because remember, the flood was a flood of waters, but then baptism is a flood to graft you into being saved, graft you into everlasting life with Jesus. So the two seem connected. Now, let's keep going here. What else? Well, the number 216, a lot of people link that to the moon. I think there's 2,160 miles to the moon or something like that. I can't remember. And the diameter is the same. It's like 2116 for the diameter of the moon. So there's something weird about that number as well, because it is 6 times 6 times 6. Now let's keep going, because at this point, Sue, the younger self, she exceeds her 7 days at Elizabeth's expense, and it causes her to age more rapidly. Let's keep watching here.
It's phenomenal!
Just one more day, and then I have a whole week off. We can switch.
Now, in order to extend her time, she has to take spinal taps, basically, out of Elizabeth's spine to keep her going. Otherwise, her nose starts bleeding and she starts falling apart.
Yes.
She didn't respect the balance completely without consideration of the consequences. She's stealing more and more time from me. Stop.
You are the Matrix.
Now, this is where we get confirmation of some previous discoveries that we'd made as Elizabeth calls the voice who gave her the substance. And he says that her other half is cheating and stealing time from her. And he's like, you are one. You're not different. And he says to her, you are the Matrix. And if she wants to stop, all she has to do is stop.
If you are not satisfied, you can put an end to the experience and go back to being just you.
Now, what is this about? And why? How does this link into stuff we studied before? You guys, in the Bible, the womb is called the Matrix. Now, some people think that's a Mandela effect. I don't think it is. I think it's the truth. Because we looked at the actual musculature of the female anatomy of the womb, and we found that it looks like cross-hatched diamonds. It's literally a matrix of muscles. And when you're born into the womb, you're born into sin, is what the Bible says. There's no way out of it because you're born into it. We're trapped here. Jesus Christ is the only way out. And so when he calls her the Matrix, this is significant, isn't it? Why? Because it was out of her back that the younger version of herself emerged, just like a womb. Now, this begs the question, doesn't it? This begs the question. Because Adam, remember, Eve came out of his side. And we get a lot of that symbolism here in this film. Parting, basically emerging from the side or the womb of the other person. And it begs the question, what would happen if there were no more people having babies? The Matrix would end, wouldn't it? It would end. Now, I'm not advocating for that, but this is, gosh, right? It's weird. Now, let's keep going here. Now, I almost skipped this scene that I'm going to show you next because I wasn't sure it was relevant, but then it only confirmed what I just told you. Watch. Now, what is happening here? Well, she's got a drumstick in her side. Why? Because earlier, her older self ate a bunch of chicken. And it manifests inside of her side, just like I just said, right? She pulls the chicken out of her belly button, and it ends up being a nightmare. It wasn't real. But what's this about? Well, the significance of someone giving birth to a drumstick would be the example in the Bible. Adam gave birth to Eve from his side. And what did he call her? Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. So that would be signified by, or symbolized by, a drumstick with flesh and bone, right? Now let's keep going here.
But you can.
Now the entity tells her that she can stop. But she's not going to go back to the way she was. Now, ultimately, even as she's aged rapidly, as her younger self keeps stealing time from her, she can't bring herself to do it. She can't bring herself to do it. And she rejects the offer to stop. Let's keep watching here.
Stop the experience as of now. Would you like to stop? To go back to being just you on your own? To host the New Year's Eve show? Can you confirm this?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, that's right.
Oh my God!
I guess that's why you could say we have some sort of connection.
Some sort of connection. You wouldn't exist without me.
But ever since I can remember, it has always been my dream to be on screen.
Now, this film really is about what? It's about vanity, isn't it? We all have things about ourselves that we don't like, don't we? But we see these imperfections about ourselves every day because we live in our own bodies, right? So they become magnified. But most people don't recognize our faults like we do. Most people don't see our insecurities like we do. It's our society that magnifies the narrative depicting perfection on the screen that is enhanced by tricks. And instead of focusing on our strengths and being grateful for the things that we do have that are gifts, we become obsessed with our faults, don't we? And it's pretty sad and it's pretty sick, because then we spread this disease to our children who still don't feel good enough, even as a youthful child. Now, Jesus' kingdom will be different. First of all, he sees you for the way you will be in his kingdom. He sees you perfected and he loves you unconditionally. So you don't have to worry about these things, because you don't know how, you have no idea how many people I talk to who know that Jesus loves them and they don't care what the world thinks, because they feel the love of Jesus. There's no judgment in Jesus' love, right? And we know we're getting new bodies and a new mind and a new heart and a new soul. And we have faith, and that is the faith that the Bible tells us we're supposed to have. And that's what we can look forward to. This world is only a speck of time compared to eternity. And I know sometimes that's hard to believe when you're suffering, but it is the truth. Now, we all know that these actors work for the enemy, right? We know this. I mean, it's crazy because you have to wonder, what happens to these people once it's over for them, because their own sin causes them to turn into this? One day, Demi Moore is going to really look like this, right? Where do they go? And I wondered about this, and I wonder if there's some island, we talk a little bit about this, that they all go to after they've served the enemy. And on this island, maybe there are clone bodies of themselves. And this is why they sell out, because they've been told, look, hey, when you're all done, we've made a clone for you, and then you can possess the brand new body, and then you can go live on this island. That's the only thing. And some of them, they probably let out some of their like top people. They let them back out to live a second life and act and still serve the enemy. This is why some of them have doubled down on their sin, right? I mean, these are just theories, but we're going to talk a little bit more about this, because I was shocked at Demi Moore's role. I thought she was like a washed up actress with not too much talent. And I can't even remember the last time I saw a movie with her in it, but I was actually kind of shocked at how well she played this role. The acting that on her part was really good. Like, it was really convincing. And I'm not saying that out of admiration. I'm saying that because this is fallen angel talent. Okay. They're so convincing at it. And now, if you didn't watch this decode, you would walk away from this movie feeling very depressed. And you would feel like, wow, this is what happens when we get old. Why is it even worth living? This is what you'd feel like after watching this movie, because of how convincing and effective Demi Moore is in this role. So, bizarre. Now, let's keep going, because next, older Demi becomes a recluse, and she stays at home, as you just saw. She's cooking all these bizarre and grotesque French recipes. It's almost, you get the feeling it's like a witch's brew or something, like frogs and all this creepy stuff, blood sausage, and she's just cooking all this stuff, and it's basically out of self-loathing and self-hate, because she got the short end of the stick. And she realizes at this point that she has to, in order to keep the charade going, she has to give in to her other self. And so a lot of people live this like this. They have self-hate because they don't have Jesus in their heart. So they hate part of themselves, don't they? Now, let's double down on this clone theory, this look-alike theory. Now, we had done some research over the years. An aspect of this channel is we've dug into old vintage photos in vintage era movies. And we noticed that some of our contemporary and modern actors resemble, almost to a T, some of these vintage era actors. And some of the similarities are stunning. We looked at one, what was it, Drew Barrymore? Do you guys remember that? Drew Barrymore. And it was supposed to be her aunt in these old vintage photos, but it is a dead ringer. And so you have to ask yourself, is there a doppelganger? Is there a codependent situation between an older self and a younger self? The younger self siphoning off energy from the older self, or vice versa. And you have to ask yourself, is this something that's going on just beneath the surface of some of these actors' lives? You guys, we're going to be shocked once we are in heaven, once the earth is recreated and all this is over. We're going to be shocked at some of the secrets that are revealed to us about what really happened in the last days, right? Now, to tie into this discussion, another example of this cloning and doppelganger, some of the apocryphal texts actually mention that there was some strange connection between the giants and a smaller version of themselves. We did a show on this, and the smaller version of themselves, it was almost like a mini me. I can't remember which text we were reading through, but essentially they needed this smaller version of themselves for some reason. I don't know if it was to give, for childbirth. I don't know what it was, but they would, I don't know what the deal was, but we'll have to go back. I'll have to re-upload that. And this wasn't too long ago that we did this decode on that the giants had smaller versions of themselves, like a little mini me. So this kind of confirms this as well. We also looked at the first 6 generations of man, and we saw that on each side of the bloodline, on Cain's side and on Seth's side, that there was an identically named person. So there was a holy bloodline and an unholy bloodline, but the names were almost the same. And in some cases, the names were exactly the same. For 6 generations, the names that were exactly the same were Enoch and Jared. And then there were others that were very similar, like Methuselah and Methusael. And there were a couple others as well. But there were 6 total. And we did the acrostic, and we showed you guys that these are doppelgangers. They have to be. Why would they be named the same for those 6 generations, those counterparts? So there's something to this. They figured it out. And guess what? Those first 6 generations of Cain's line, the bloodline of giants, is what God destroyed in the flood. So here we are, the days of Noah, the last days, just like the days of Noah. So the same thing's going on. The same thing. Now, what else is going on? Let me show you this. Now, I can only show you part of this next part because the film, essentially from this point forward, devolves into the extremely grotesque. I can't even describe to you what happens. It's that bad. But essentially, younger Demi, she just can't do it anymore. Because every time she returns to the house, she sees her older self and she becomes disgusted with her. And she sees that she's destroyed the house and left her a huge mess. And so she ends up just taking as much spinal fluid as she can. She's just resigned herself to the fact that she's just going to live out the rest of her youthfulness, however long that is, and just destroy her older self. And I think she's hoping by some miracle that she can stay young forever, but it doesn't work out that way. She makes it all the way to the New Year's Eve party, which was her part of her promotion that she would host the largest television event of the year, which is the New Year's Eve party. And she gets all the way to the evening of the New Year's Eve party, but the last spinal taps that she can collect, they're all degraded and black. Watch.
It's always been my dream to be on screen.
Now, this is crazy because we've been talking about this black goo DNA, the black blood, the blue bloods. And so now it's becoming real, isn't it? Because now they're depicting all this stuff. They're doubling down and depicting it in these movies. This is the infective blood that we've been talking so much about, that they want to infect humanity with so they can double us, so they can doppelganger us, right?
Yes.
Hi, this is an emergency. There's no more stabilizer fluid. Excuse me?
The switch reboots the fluid secretion process, so
Now, at this point, she's freaking out. She feels like she did all this to make it to the New Year's Eve party, but she runs out of the stabilizer, which is from the spine of her older self. And at this point, she's like, she can't believe it, but it's the truth. Let's back this up a little bit.
boots the fluid secretion process, so you can continue to enjoy the experience.
No.
She stumbles back to the bathroom where her older self is to try to switch back, even though she would miss the New Year's Eve party, right? Now she's developed this relationship with this guy who's in her apartment, and she barely, right as she switches back into her old self. Now remember, her older self has been degraded all the way down to, like, she turns into essentially a demon. And that's why I can't show you. It's just too disgusting. Bald. She's like, has no hair. Her back is hunched over like a demon with bones sticking all. It's disgusting. I can't even show you. But she switches into her older body, and then her older body barely makes it to the bathroom door to lock the boyfriend out, who, of course, she does not want him to see her like that. Now, at this point, her older self basically, like I said, she turns into this disgusting golem-looking creature. She covers up because she has to go get her new package to continue the charade, right? To continue the switching. And at this point, what happens? She basically finally thinks that she's going to stop the insanity. So she goes to pick up her last kit in her present condition. So she goes back to this white room with the locker in it, and she's pretty much going to end her younger self because she just can't do it anymore. She wants to stop the insanity. So she goes to find the termination kit. Inside the termination kit is black goo, the black DNA. And she's told she has to inject it into the heart of her younger self. And that's what will end the madness. But she's now stuck in the golem body. So she injects the term, and there you got a glimpse of what Demi Moore finally looks like in the end. This is why it's so disgusting. And it's way worse. That was PG version. She injects this stuff into her heart, and there you go again. The serpent in the chest, right? The black DNA. This is what they're trying to do. Matches up with unclean spirits. Now, At the last second, she changes her mind, but it's too late. She already injected the Terminator fluid in there, right? And she tries to switch back one more time to revive her younger self. She's able to do it, but the younger self and she are both awake at the same time, which is not supposed to happen. At this point, the younger self realized that her older self just tried to kill her, and she literally beats her to death in one of the most graphic scenes I think I've ever seen in a movie. It just goes off the rails. I do not recommend this, you guys. I can't say that enough. And she basically, the younger self realizes that she has basically likely dug her own grave by killing her older self. She then makes it to the New Year's Eve party, but she starts feeling the effects of the severance from her other half, who is now dead.
I'm gonna be right back, sorry.
So obviously it starts to degrade, and she's in no condition to do the New Year's Eve party, as she begins to basically fall apart. She basically runs out of the New Year's Eve party. She slips away just before it starts, and she runs back to the apartment to basically try to survive. At this point, she tries to spawn another self out of her. She thinks, okay, I can just do what I did in the very beginning, just spawn another younger self out of her body. But it doesn't work. And what's born out of her is a creature even more hideous than her older self. And again, I'm not going to show that to you, but it's got all the parts in the wrong places. There's faces coming out of it, and it's disgusting. Let's finish this up here. And her older hideous, or the new hideous creation that comes out of the back of the younger self, thinks that she can go back and host the New Year's Eve party anyway. And she shows up to the shock and horror of the audience. And when the lights come on, they see this hideous monster. Now, let's back up a little bit, because remember, we talked about the generations of man since the beginning of time being like baking a cake with substandard ingredients. Remember all the videos we did on the curse of the dust? Remember this? The dust was cursed, and the ground was cursed for Cain. God told him the earth will not yield its produce for you to Cain. And the dust was cursed. So what happens when dust is cursed? Every time you reuse it, imagine using the same flour over and over and over and over again, and you never get any new flour to bake a cake. Well, with every generation that comes out of the ground and all the sin in the earth, it gets more and more degraded. And this is what we discovered is the nested reality. It's the things within things, things coming out of things. Russian dolls. You will surely die, the Bible says. And it reminded me of the Millennium decode that we did on that movie about time travel, where future man goes back in time so that they can find untouched DNA to bring back to the future. Remember that? It's basically man consuming himself. And maybe this is what the Bible says about the serpent licking the dust. licking the dust and consuming men. Now, we also found that the original tree of the knowledge of good and evil was a vine, almost like a snake. Wow. So, the movie ends with this grotesque deformity. I'm not going to show it to you. Returning to the studio to the shock and horror of everybody. Appears on stage, and essentially the crowd attacks her. I mean, it's a whole new level of disgusting. The crowd attacks her and they call her a monster. They don't understand what's happening. And she retaliates by dousing the crowd with her own blood. It's just disgusting. Now, that's it. That's the end of the movie. And it's really a sign of the times, right? Things have gotten super demonic, haven't they? Okay. Demi Moore, a mainstream actress, or used to be a mainstream actress in this type of role in this mainstream movie that millions of people have seen. And hopefully one of those people watches this decode and understands that these concepts have been revealed and developed over the past decade on this channel. And it's all pointing you back to understanding that there is a true fight between good and evil. It's not about Republicans and Democrats. It's about real good and evil. And if you haven't already today, give your life to Jesus Christ. If I haven't shown you today that this all points back to the Bible, it all points back to the end times, and that God has revealed a lot of very important concepts and things for you to stay away from in these last days, then I don't know what will. Now, if this is your first decode you're viewing, definitely check out part 1 of the decode that we did on the substance. It'll give you even more clarity. And if you can, subscribe and tune in to the decodes that we do every single day, and then you'll start to see real patterns that are undeniable. Unfortunately, we now live in the age of everything is a short now. Everything is a 2-minute attention span. And they did that on purpose because they don't want these concepts to be developed in people's minds and for the truth to become crystal clear. They do not want that. They want to continue to program you with the information, right? Which, again, if you were to watch this movie without a decode, you would leave feeling very rejected. You'd feel lost. You'd feel ugly. You'd feel like you could never measure up to the standard of beauty. But when you see it through the eyes of a decode, it's hope. There's hope for the new kingdom and the new future. Without all this, we're going to get brand new flour. Jesus is going to make us all wonderful cakes instead of degraded flour used over and over again from cursed dust. Now, tomorrow is between the headlines. We'll get into some stories. You guys, they are literally shaping the fabric of our reality and perceptions through censorship. And I just don't say that lightly. Tomorrow's show will be concrete examples of how they shape public opinion by controlling comments sections. They literally create the consensus that they want by shaping and molding what comments are allowed, no matter how nice you make the comment, no matter how reasonable of an argument you present, no matter how polite you are. Public forums are now completely controlled. I don't even know if there's any value of looking at them anymore or leaving a comment because it's all shaped and controlled. And I'll show you some specific examples of a few things that happened over the last several weeks and how they're shaping and controlling the narrative of the Ukraine and people's perceptions about that and the money being spent. I'm going to show you guys all that tomorrow and some other headlines as well. All right, I'm back in the chat, you guys. Good morning. So hopefully I gave you the PG version of that. I didn't want it to be scary. But also wanted to show you the, symbolism surrounding it. So I'm back in the chat now. Wow. Was that insane or what? All right. Yes, the carpet, that was similar, but it wasn't exact, so I didn't think it was worth a mention, Rory. There was a lot of other things I wanted to focus on. Otherwise, people start accusing me of stretching stuff, right? So, I mean, you're right, though. It was very similar. The color scheme was similar and all that. So, absolutely. Do I censor my chat? There is a fine line between censorship and disruption. As you all know, AI bots, robots come in, and all of their resources and time is spent hiding truth. So that's way different than real people trying to, share a consensus, which would be many, many, many people agreeing with the same thing. That would be censorship. But it's, maintaining a channel and making sure that bots aren't coming in and overriding, the last bastions of free thought and truth. That's completely different. That's not censorship. Okay. So I've had people come into our chat every single day that I just had to block because they just come and disrupt every single day. And there's only a few of them. It's not like a consensus of people interrupting. It's a few people that consistently just disrupt. They say weird off the wall things that have absolutely nothing to do with what we're presenting. And that's called a distraction. And you have to wonder if they're bots or they're provocateurs or whatever. But they are not focused on this very, very groundbreaking and important information. So to me, that's not censorship. Besides, the size of our house, let's call it, because that's what a channel is already been greatly diminished by the algorithms and the machine. They've cut it down to almost nothing. There are a few holdouts. You guys have been here since the beginning, and so they've already diminished our reach. And as I told you, I will never stop. I don't care if there's 10 of you watching. All it's going to do is expose the enemy. Because once we get down to 10 people watching, everyone will know. They'll be like, wow, why are there only 10 people watching? And it exposes them. But they find this middle ground. So they'll give you a group of people, and then they hide you from the rest of the internet. Days of Noah talked about this. It's called relevance. Okay. They give you the image of being free and having free speech, but then you have no reach. And so therefore you really don't have free speech, right? And then what they do is once they get you diminished, they'll seed in provocateurs and bots and AI to continue to degrade the experience for anybody watching. Okay. I'll give you a typical AI bot, comment that was left yesterday that I actually deleted. They said, how do you feel after watching this decode? Do you feel better or do you feel worse? That's an AI bot. Okay. No one would ask that question, especially since almost at the end of every show, we talk about the solutions and the answers and Jesus Christ. We talk about why we're here to reach the people that are watching this stuff and being programmed by it. And since we also expose cartoons, animations, things that people go to watch for fun. And so that's not a real question. That's a question that's supposed to make you feel afraid to see the truth so that you bury your head in the sand like an ostrich. And then you're completely unprepared for the last days and what's coming. And you're completely unprepared for what the enemy is doing, all of his weapons against humanity. You're completely unprepared because you haven't researched. You don't know what the programming is. You don't know how you're being manipulated. So this is a very challenging job running a YouTube channel. It's not for the faint of heart. Okay. All right. I'm back in the chat. That's a good question. Those are great questions. So thanks for that, you guys. All right. Yes, the great falling away. The Bible talked about this. The real truth, which, there's no need for fear. And that's another thing, And bots will often leave comments like, "You're living in fear." Well, how can you say that when every show we say no fear and nobody in the comments is saying they're afraid? You know, so that's to make you afraid, right? No, we have no fear because we know where we're going. We know that this world is temporary. We know that it can't be sustained. The Bible tells us over and over again. So we're not afraid. We have hope, actually. The Bible says we're supposed to rejoice when we see these things coming. We're supposed to be happy about it. Why? Because then we know this world is over. It's a level of excitement that we have about the end of this, because this is not sustainable. This world is not sustainable, but so many people think it is. So, all right. What else is going on, you guys? All right, I'm going to pop off here. I guess I'll see you guys in the morning. Love each and every one of you. And between the headlines, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Much love.